fire is one of the ways to reconnect us to the land around us and our ancestors and our cultural lifeways. And working with fire is such an amazing, exciting thing that, it's in our DNA. And so it's like we're answering a calling.
This is the Good Fire Podcast, stories of Indigenous fire stewardship, cultural and social empowerment, and environmental integrity. So welcome back to Good Fire Season 3, The Matriarchs. This is Amy, and this is our last episode. It seems like it's been epic trying to get this all together, get it recorded, and get it out, and kind of sad that we're on the last episode here. But to kind of bring back the joy, I wanted to bring in Matt Kristoff, who was the co-host for Season 1 and Season 2, and has been in the background producing all of these episodes. So Matt has had a sneak preview of what we've been discussing, everything that's gone on with Good Fire. So yeah, wanted to bring him back for the last episode here. Hey, Matt.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was really interesting. It was cool to kind of be in the background and just be able to remove myself from trying to come up with a good question and be able to just enjoy it. So it was really, really fantastic that way. And I mean, I know this is the last episode now, so everybody's listened to the whole thing, but man, what a powerful season. There's just so much realness and so much power and even though there's so much clear pain and suffering and hardship, there's so much optimism. And I can say without a doubt that it's such a optimistic series, and just looking for that opportunity and new movement in the right direction, right, is really, really cool to be a part of. So yeah, thanks for involving me.
Yeah, no, it was great. And I think, the whole thing started when we were we're going to do matriarchs, I said to you, and you were like, I don't know, it seems odd for me to be co-hosting that one. And you were busy with your own personal life and stuff too. You're a dad and got your own podcast, the Your Forest podcast, and a job. And it's a lot to take on too. I mean, just the scheduling of the podcast is difficult. And I know too, we've talked about it before, but how our styles are because all the people we're interviewing are my friends. So I'm we'll just I don't shoot the shit, but I don't know. I guess, we can say swear words on here, but yeah, just that, we'll just talk, and you're kind of but what are our questions? And I'm it'll be great. They're so nice.
Yeah. It comes from a place of you're this is your world and it's not mine. And I'm just wait, I don't know what I'm talking about. What are we doing? But it's always fun though. Even during the Season 1 and Season 2, I just had to take a step back and kind of listen and ask those genuine questions that came up in my mind as a non-Indigenous person. And I think it was fun, but it was really interesting to take a back seat and just listen, because it took the pressure off of me, which was nice.
Yeah. Well, in this one, we've got, different guest co-hosts that have come in, and other people and different folks helping with the intros and outros. So it's been a fun season of recording and getting everything. And, we released the teaser probably a year ago or something. And since then I've changed jobs, there's been a lot of things that have happened. And so, another busy fire season. So anyways, we're doing our best for Matt and I. It's both a side of the desk thing for both of us. And so we do the best we can to kind of get it out in a timely manner to you all. And I really wanted to make sure that we had the right folks on this one. And so we talk about it in some of the episodes, but just how busy people are that are working in this field right now, especially as Indigenous women, because there's very few of us. So there's a lot of different requests. So yeah, thanks to all the people who, took the time to schedule and to record with me. And so I think today, this is our last episode, and this is the one that I wanted to save for last, because these to me, so it's Elizabeth Azzuz and Margo Robbins from the Yurok Tribe, the Cultural Fire Management Council. And to me, in terms of matriarchs, these are the two ultimate matriarchs. I met them both at the Indigenous Peoples Burning Network meetings, and just the way and the kindness they have and the ability to bring people together and the laughter, but also taking no crap from anybody. Like, I just love them. And so anyways, this episode was hilarious to record. Like, it's honestly, it's hard too. Like, they were talking about hard things, but it's also so funny. And I remember Elizabeth telling me one time, like, she can always tell where Margo is on the fires because she just listens for her laughter and like knows where she is in the area. So I can't wait for everyone to experience that.
Yeah, it's a fantastic way to wrap it up because it's, like you said, even though there's a lot of hard things discussed, there's just never ending optimism from both of them, which is, it's so impressive and so powerful to be able to have those hard experiences, but to come out of it stronger and with more pride and with more excitement, right? It's a really, really cool way to wrap up.
Yeah. And they started this, like, they'll talk about it, but like when they were in like their 50s and stuff, right? Like, it's, they were kind of had their families and things. And then it was just decided by their nation that, they needed to bring fire back. And so they stepped up and are just doing an incredible job. And so I just love that too with them, is it's just, they're always advocating and, always going for their community, which is wonderful.
Yeah. It's a cool episode.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So we'll listen to it. I hope you all enjoy them and their hilarious laughter. And then, we'll see you on the other side. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Good Fire Podcast. We are in the last episode today, and I thought, what a great way to close out the matriarch season, but with two of, for me, the preeminent matriarchs in cultural fire. And that's Elizabeth Azzuz and Margo Robbins from the Yurok Tribe. And they'll explain to you kind of what they're doing, but they are leaders and I think excellent examples for Indigenous women that want to kind of pursue, cultural fire in their life. So what we'll do is I'll get you each to kind of introduce yourself and share a little bit about your story, like what has made you so passionate about, committing part of your life to cultural fire. So maybe Elizabeth, we'll start with you.
Sure. Good morning. My name is Elizabeth Azzuz. I'm a Yurok tribal member and a Karuk descendant. Also have some descendancy from Amy's neck of the woods.
Metis Nation, yeah.
Yay. I actually started burning when I was 4. My grandfather caught me playing with matches and decided it was time for me to learn my responsibility to the mother and to the people. And so I've always had this obvious great love for fire and what it can do, how it can restore our environment, our ecosystems, provide food and medicine for our people, basket materials for our weavers. And a great piece of my joy comes from training younger generations to carry this forward. I always tend to tell them, I'm not going to be able to do this forever. So you need to absorb as much information as you can so that you can move forward when we finally set our torch down.
Yeah. And I mean, you've done a fantastic job with the Cultural Fire Management Council, which we'll get into and talk about in detail. Margo, you're up next.
Ayukui Niknau Margo Robbins, Kichnak Executive Director for the Cultural Fire Management Council. I come from the traditional village of Murek along the Klamath River, and I am an enrolled Yurok tribal member. I got into fire because I'm a basket weaver, and the frames of our baskets are made with hazel, which need to have fire in order to reproduce new single shoots, which is what we need for weaving. The art of basket weaving was really dying out because we didn't have access to materials because of the rules and regulations governing the use of fire. And those people who would light on the down low, CAL FIRE would quickly come and put out the fires. And so I was becoming a grandma, and I wanted my grandbabies to be carried in traditional baskets. And it so happened that around that same time, the California Endowment had the Building Healthy Communities initiative, and they came to our area and wanted to know, what our community felt was the most pressing needs in our community, and our community said fire. And so, as often happens in areas, everybody comes together. But when it comes down to, all right, who's going to lead the charge? There was not a lot of people stepping forward to do that. And so that ended up being me. So I'm one of the co-founders of the Cultural Fire Management Council. As we started down this path, we came to realize that fire has an amazing effect on not just the land and the health of the land and the resources that it produces, but it is in fact a way to bring health back to our communities. A lot of our young people are lost that, through the boarding systems and other factors, our identity as Yurok people is wavering. And that manifests itself in a lot of unhealthy behaviors, drug and alcohol use and all of those things. And I think it is in a large part due to our loss of cultural identity. And so fire is one of the ways to reconnect us to the land around us and our ancestors and our cultural lifeways. And working with fire is such an amazing, exciting thing that, it's in our DNA. And so it's like we're answering a calling. And it is the path that I've chosen. I kind of did a veer off of what I've done for a good portion of my land, which is work in the school system. And when I did, I included fire information in that. But I wanted more time to work with fire, and so I retired from there. And now I focus on restoring our lands and trying to help other tribal people reclaim their fire traditions as well.
Yeah, thanks, Margo. That's so interesting what you speak to about those ancestral ties. I've heard it described up here too as like a blood memory, that you just kind of know when you're out there and you're doing it and that it's good and you know what you should be doing. I also saw with the Yurok, I was watching some different YouTube videos and stuff from the Cultural Fire Management Council that you all have been on. I was watching about your creation story a little bit, which I thought was really interesting, and how, there was a responsibility passed down from Creator to us that we have to tend the land. And what I find it so interesting is like that's woven here as well into our creation stories. And I think I've seen similar amongst like different people I've interviewed is how that's a common thread amongst Indigenous nations.
It's really interesting. I was over at the Washoe Tribe working with them, and their fire creation story is so similar to ours, even right down to the frog being the last one to have the fire. And I'm like, oh my gosh,
Yes, it's a small world that way. We're spread by so much, but I just think that that's such a beautiful element to have woven through all. So can you explain, maybe Elizabeth, I'll pass to you to explain about the Cultural Fire Management Council and, how that formed. What I really noticed with that group on your website is you have a lot of partners. Like it seems like you've done a fantastic job of relationship building too. So wondered if you could speak to that as well.
I almost feel like Margo should answer that question, since
Sure.
I always say that this is her baby, because I was working on another project with our former executive director at the time that Margo started this. And when I finished working, helping with road signs, speed reduction, crosswalks, and these things, Bob McConnell asked me to help Margo with fire. So really, honestly, I'm just coming in on her beautiful project, and I'm so excited to be part of it. But this is her baby.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Margo.
Well, it was really interesting because after we did our first burn and we started planning our second one, and we had a smaller group at that point, And we'll always see Elizabeth sitting in the main room there at the community center. And one day I asked her, well, how come you're not part of us? And she says, I was just waiting to be asked. I'm like, okay, well, you're part of us now. And she has just
Get
become
in here
really,
then.
a cornerstone of our organization. So like I said, we started out as it was called the Klamath Local Organizing Committee. And it was through that we did our first burn. And then we veered off because we wanted to focus solely on fire. And we came up with our name, the Cultural Fire Management Council. There was Awak Tom Wilson and my sister Carol Lewis and Bob McConnell, who is the father of who is now our burn boss, Robert McConnell. We was thinking of a name because we can't still be the local organizing committee because we're a smaller group. And we can't just say, well, we're Bob, Tom, Carol, and Margo.
That's catchy. Come on, Margo.
And, we just did whatever it took to make it happen. We didn't take no for an answer. We didn't agree when people said, oh, you ain't going to be able to do that. We're like, we're doing this. We're doing this. We can't burn once and call it good. That for basket weaving, you burn 1 year and then the following year you can pick, and it's only for a few weeks. So you have to burn every single year. And in addition to that, we have all this overgrowth of vegetation on the land from the lack of fire. And so we're worried about, wildfire and our elders not being able to escape. And so for several years, we all just volunteered our time. If we got a little bit of money, we would pay, some local young men who would just take whatever it was we had and go out and cut the fire lines. And we had established a partnership with the Nature Conservancy, who are just incredible partners. And they would contract with people they sent in a burn boss to train our community so that we would have the entry-level firefighter qualifications that the government requires for the most part in order to use fire. And we learned to navigate the system and to work within the confines of what the system requires, because prison's not an option. And so we burned for several years just on a volunteer basis. And then finally in 2019, we got applied for a grant through CAL FIRE, a wildfire prevention grant. And we got $1 million grant. And we were so excited, it's like, hooray, finally we can, pay people. And so we hired on a full-time crew to do fire lines. And, we can only burn so much, and there's, limited burn windows, and we wanted to provide full-time jobs. So we also did home protection and roadside clearance to keep them working full-time. But when it came time to burn, we always choose places that are rich in cultural resources. And as it happens, those places are, a lot of them are right along the one road that comes on to the reservation. And so it was dual purpose, It provides important cultural resources for the community while also providing wildfire protection in an area that's rated as extremely high fire risk by CAL FIRE. And so we have just built our organization from, volunteers, and then we went in partnership with Firestorm and got a small grant to get a slip-on fire engine, and But just like I said, we do what it takes to make it happen.
Yeah, I think too, I saw that you're also hoping to build a cultural fire training center, which I thought looked pretty amazing. And I think some of that, when I read in the description, it was talking about how, because of how remote you are, it's very difficult for people to come that want to get training and other things. There's nowhere to stay or to provide meals, and just what a cultural training center could really fulfill a great need for the nation there.
I'm going to let Elizabeth give the update on that because she's also a board member.
Yes. So last night we actually approved the purchase of 140 acres for Cultural Fire Management Council. It's a unit that I call it a unit, but we have burned there a few times before. And to have a building and a shop already on this property and have access very close to Margo's home, actually, to be able to house people. Normally she uses her yard, her house, whatever she can to allow people to camp there, or we have camping sites nearby. But this will be, God, it's just amazing. It makes my heart sing every time I think about it. We're going to have this facility now. I consider the first prescribed fire training facility in California. It's Indigenous female run, which is amazing to me. I just can't even really, I've still been floating since yesterday after the board meeting, thinking about it. But,
this podcast, I was going to say, this was perfectly timed. Great announcement.
Absolutely. I mean, it was so exciting to have so many of our board members walk into the room and have this discussion and agree upon it, and know that we'll actually have a place that will be ours. We won't have to borrow tribal facilities. We won't have to have our people camping out in places we're not sure if they're going to be okay or not. Mm-hmm. But it's, oh my God, this is so amazing. We're growing so fast. We'll be able to bring on, more staff, be able to have we're going to remodel so we can have a bigger kitchen and office space in there. And I don't know. I'm so excited. I can't even put it into words.
It's going to be amazing. I can't wait to come visit.
It has the property comes with 2 40 by 80 foot buildings.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're just they're just beautiful. And the one that we'll use for our training center part has this big, huge open room, 28 by 80 feet. And so,
that's gonna be a lot of in there.
So we'll section off the kitchen and, like Elizabeth said, have office space, and then the shop area we can park our fire engines in. And so, it's exciting stuff.
Congratulations! That's so awesome for you. Both of you. I thought too, speaking about your board that was there, one thing that I was really taken by when I looked at your board members is that there are a lot of women, which is really kind of rare for many fire groups. How did you get so many women, just on your board and as employees?
Really honestly, we're all community. Most of us are tribal members. Some of us are tribal members with other, obviously, tribes and reserves and reservations and such. But I honestly think our longevity comes from our women, because we're always planning and thinking ahead and wanting things to go well for this organization. And it brings a stability for me that, we all seem to have a common thought process, and it's really helpful when we're sitting down in a board meeting and being able to have these conversations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it reminds me of here, lots of our nations are matriarchal. So, there's almost like a grandmother council or something, that even though there's the chief and others, there's, the grandmothers that sit over and advise. And that's almost what, just looking at your board and stuff, I was like, oh, it's almost like that kind of traditional setup, where you have a lot of women there that are at the table participating as well.
It seems like oftentimes the women are the movers and the shakers in the community.
Well, yeah, you guys are proving that. I mean, to already have a cultural fire training center is really exciting. I know up here people are talking about doing that, but it's still such a dream, right? And the fact that you've all have achieved it already is amazing. So yeah, congrats to you.
Well, it's kind of interesting because we had originally planned to purchase a property on the Upper Yurok Reservation and to build. We had the plans all drawn up to build a training center, but as it turned out, we couldn't access water to that property. And so we shifted gears and
as you do, right?
Yeah. Like I said, we do whatever's necessary. If we need to shift gears, that's what we do.
Yeah, awesome.
We're pretty good at doing it real quick, like.
Yeah, can you explain about what kind of training and programs you offer? So I know one really unique thing about you all is that you have a really good relationship with the Nature Conservancy and putting on treks programs. And I know when we met at the Indigenous Peoples Burning Network, I was kind of talking about how I am still a bit hesitant around the treks programs because I find it's very reliant on the incident command system and military, the red task books and other things. So I'm quite interested to know, I know that you guys have made it a really positive relationship. So interested to know how you've been rolling out those kind of events.
For me, when we first met with Firestorm and the Nature Conservancy with Jeremy Bailey, I remember Jim Wills asking me what exactly we wanted from them. And my statement to him was that I intended to data mine him for every piece of information he had and to create our own organization. Yeah. And watching ourselves evolve over this time, yes, we built great relationships with government agencies and non-government agencies, but we have also turned this into something that's specific to us, to the Yurok people. We don't follow the incident command system as well as we probably should or could. But we have created something that works here in this extension of the reservation, by when our maps talk about upriver and downriver and upslope and downslope. We don't do the whole Yankee, Zulu, Delta, all of these different names that they require us to use in what I would call a militaristic organization. So it's more tailored to Indigenous people. We talk about the resources that are important to us. We talk about the land and the water and how all of these things are affected. And I have liaisoned for government treks and was very, very disappointed in their system and the way they act. And had basically told the Nature Conservancy I would never liaison another government treks because I really felt horrible by the way they treated the environment, the way they treated each other, the way that that they thought and the way they spoke. And so for me, it's always been a personal goal to make sure that people that come into our territory are comfortable. They know, why we do this. They're here to learn. We're teaching them how to work with nature, how to work with the land, how to work with the environment. We're not teaching them how to take over the world, because obviously there are organizations out there doing that on their own. And I've seen how they have a hard time, dealing with, I would say myself in personal, I'm going to say this, when, someone talks to me like that, I automatically want to say to them, excuse me, but we're human beings. We don't act like that. And so it feels real nice for me to, watch our organization grow and expand and know that we're doing it in a natural way.
That's really interesting when you talk about the whole, the whole system as it's set up. And that was definitely something that took a little getting used to, that the person tells you what to do and you do it. And it's like, I don't take orders well. I barely even take suggestions. But, it's a safety issue that, you have your crews and the person who's in the leadership. And so we do follow that. but I think that we was really fortunate in that when we first started the Trex model with T and C as our mentors, that they were really, really respectful and cognizant of working with tribal people. And so even though we were new in this game of prescribed fire and the whole system, we were sitting at that decision-making table, and we were helping make the decisions about when, where, and how to burn and the whys of it. And also there's always been time made for us to share the cultural and ecological importance of fire on the ground so that people, understand that we're not just burning brush, that, that it is restoration of land and culture. And so the Nature Conservancy was, like I said, really respectful of that. And I think another piece of it is that, we live in a really, really remote area. Most of us didn't grow up with TVs and, places that you go to entertain you, like movies and dances and stuff like that. And so as people, we entertain each other, And so, we just have fun while we're out there. We are happy and joyful and excited to be working with fire. And yes, we understand the need to follow certain protocols and lines of command for safety's sake, but we're not letting that diminish how we feel about being out there with each other and on the land and working with fire.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I think the thing too that I really like about how you do Trex is it's like local leaders in your own territory. And I think the difficulty I've had with it a bit is that lots of times it's bringing in outside experts to an area who then, because they have like that certification, like you said, Margo, come in and just kind of start telling you what to do. Whereas I'm really, I just believe much more in the local about fire, right? And respecting local expertise. And I'm really happy you guys have been able to work that into how you do the Trex events.
Yeah. I think another piece of it too is that we have never had CAL FIRE or the U.S. Forest Service leading our burns. And I think that makes a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And there has been a time or two when we've had people who come in trainee positions to lead, who we just had to pull them aside right off the get and said, look, this is not how we do things. Mm-hmm. We're not north and east. We're upriver and downriver. We're, we don't call people by their last names. One guy was insistent. I didn't even know who he was talking about, my son-in-law. Williams, who's that? I'm like, we'll call people by the first names around here. And so we kind of insist on that, more relaxed style of getting things done.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and I think too, the type of fire as well, I know that you're putting on, like I saw on your website that you call it like quiet fire. I know a lot of people have different words. So, the Good Fire podcast, but I really like that quiet fire. I thought that it brought a really beautiful like connotation of how the fire is on the land, how people are when they're putting that fire down.
Yeah. A piece that's really touching for me is when we go out and Margo and I do a test fire, we open up our training with a prayer. We're asking permission from the land and the animals and the people and the environment to come into their home and to restore their home. But, that kind of sets the tone for what we want when we're out on these units, and for me, being able to set that prayer up in smoke and ask permission in front of all of these people who have absolutely no idea what we're starting to do. And then, Margo and I will finish the prayer and sometimes, a song will come to you, so you put that song out there, you put that medicine out there, and that sets the tone for the way the whole burn is going to go. And it really changes people's perspective. I've had grown men tell me that we've made them cry.
Yeah,
well, Having 7 brothers, I often want to make men cry, but it's never happened because of prayer.
Yeah. No, definitely. And I think that that's the thing that lots of agencies have lost with fire, right? Is that the connection and the relationship. It's become more of like a job and, ladder climbing and, being exported around to different places where you're the expert. And I think that that really has lost touch with like the importance of Indigenous fire, where it's really based on local knowledge. I wanted to talk about that with, the family burns that y'all do with the Cultural Fire Management Council. I'm interested to know if you can describe those, how they kind of differ from what you might see with like a normal prescribed fire.
Yeah, so our family burns is a program that we started really to help elders, single families, community members create defensible space for themselves. And so we'll go out and show them, what they need to do, how to clear around their homes, how to create piles. And then once all of that's done, we'll go out and have their family participate and actually start the ignition of the fire and be there to learn how to burn safely. We bring out equipment and a few crew members and basically just stand by and help them, teach them. And it's really kind of interesting for me to have all of these young people coming forward and saying, I want to protect my family's property, but I don't know what to do. Can you guys help us? And right now we're working with a family who's clearing their dance ground for a flower dance for a young woman in their family. So her coming of age ceremony. And it's been really nice because I've sent some of the young men down to go help. And they said, no, it has to be all the women and we have to do it with machetes. So, each family has their interpretation of how they want to do something, and just being part of that feels really good.
Yeah, I love the inclusion of children too, because I know you were talking about, when you were setting fires at 4 or whatever, and then learning the right way, right? And I find I'm like a bit sensitive because here, like, people associate fire with bad. And so even in the work that I'm doing, there's always like, disclaimers about, if we teach children about using fire, then they're going to go and set. But I'm like, that's the opposite of, I think, what actually happens. Like with my kids, I've taught them a lot about responsibility of fire. And I think that that's even made them more aware, that you don't just go and put fire out. And so I wish that more students could learn that way.
Recently, I did a presentation and a wildfire resilience listening and learning session. And one of the community politicians basically wanted to know how we spread the word about this. Well, Margo was part of the school system for years. And when we'd have fish fairs or various other activities, she always made sure to include that piece about fire in there. And we have young children come out and watch our burns. We've had high school students come out and see how to use drip torches or propane torches, or I've allowed them to start, a test fire with wormwood and pitchy sticks. Just including them and teaching them and giving them that knowledge. They know what they need to do as a human being to care for their environment. And they also know how important it is to be safe with all of those things. And that's something we talk about. We did a family burn, or I should say Margo did a family burn at her property. And it was just amazing to see all her grandbabies out there. And her discussion, I have to let her tell this about their after action review. It was just amazing.
So, gosh, it's been, I'm not sure how many years back now, but there was actually a wildfire down across the way from my house. And it was in a dry part of summer. And so CAL FIRE sent all their resources out to put it out. And my one of my daughters lived on the other side of the mountain there where the fire was, and CAL FIRE went and told everybody over there that they needed to evacuate because they wasn't going to be able to protect their homes. And, we're used to being self-sufficient, and doing what it takes. And so everybody on the other side of the hill said, well, if you're not going to protect our homes, we are. And so they all stayed. And, they had heavy equipment over there, and people, most people know how to use chainsaws and stuff downriver. And so they stayed, but she didn't really realize that it kind of traumatized her kids, And so I didn't want my grandkids to be afraid of fire. And at that time, they was like maybe 6 or 7-ish, something like that. One was like 3 years old. And so I was out in my yard. It was like the day before the big football game, Super Bowl. And there was a little briar patch out there on the grassy area. And so it looked kind of dry. And so I, put a lighter to it, and the fire just kind of crept around. And I thought, oh, this will be a good place for the kids, to learn about fire. And so I asked my kids, if it was all right if I, taught, burned there with their kids. And they said, yeah. So while most of the men and stuff was up the hill watching Super Bowl, we went out there with the kids, and we had wormwood torches that the grandkids had helped me make a month or so earlier. And so, we taught them about the importance of starting at the top of the slope so the fire will slowly back down the hill. And we lit up that little briar patch with all of the kids. And there was 3 generations of us out there. And afterwards, I asked them, well, what did you learn? And they was all kind of quiet. And I said, well, where do you start? And they said, at the top of the hill. I'm like, yeah, good. I'm thinking, hooray, they got the most important piece, so important to start at the top. And I'm like, when do you burn? And they said, when there's an adult there. I'm like, yeah, that's really good. And I said, what else did you learn? And one of them says, don't swing your torch around like this over your head because you might burn somebody. I'm like, that's right. Make sure everyone around you is safe. I didn't see him do that, by the way. He didn't actually do it, but he knew that you shouldn't. Oh. Since then, my grandkids have done several burns, at least 5 or 6 burns. And, I'll just kind of test them every now and then. Like we'll be outside in the backyard and I'm like, oh, look at all those dry leaves. Looks like be a good thing to burn them. Should we burn them? And they'll be like, no, it's too windy. Or it'll go over there and burn up the chicken house, And so they're learning. And, the truth of the matter is, I think a good portion of little kids play with fire. Like most of the people that I talked to played with fire as a kid. And so it's important for them to learn that, the responsible use of fire and how and when to do it. So we make a big effort to share that with kids of all ages.
Yeah, that's awesome. I would just say, reminded me of this, like, FaceTime nowadays. So we FaceTiming my grandparents, and my daughter had the phone and she's 4. And this was just the other day. And so we're walking along outside and she like showing them like things around. So she was like, here's the cat house, here's this. And then she's like, here's a place we burned and now the grass is really green. And then like, I know. And I was like, wow, like to be 4 and like, that's just an offhand thing, like normal. So yeah, anyways, I was super proud at that moment. My parents were like, what?
That is so cool.
Yeah, it's really neat. My older daughter too is 8 and she also knows, but I would say she's at the stage where she finds it like boring after the initial lighting. Because like it is like a quiet, slower fire. And so she's kind of like, how long do we have to be out here? It's like, just watch the fire, go play in the woods, do something. But yeah, so I wanted to ask you too about your territory. So I read that Yurok actually used to be 50% prairie, which I was actually very surprised at, and that the Douglas fir was introduced there. And so it's not like a native species to your territory. So I was wondering if you could talk about that a little bit and just how, your territory's changed and what kind of it looks like now.
Fir trees are definitely native to here, but they're not supposed to grow everywhere.
Oh, okay.
That, there's a specific area that they're supposed to be in. And so, so we used fire to maintain that balance. So for example, prairies would be burned every year or at the most 2 to keep the conifers from encroaching on it. Also to keep the grass healthy and producing, good feedstock for animals and humans. There was, in addition to the ban on fire that created this unbalanced fir tree domination, there was also the big timber companies that were allowed to have a lot of our land. And after logging the area, they replanted with fir trees like really, really densely. And then also they even planted the prairies. So any place they could plant with fir trees, they did. And so it has just really, really put our ecosystems out of balance.
Okay. Yeah. I remember when we were in New Mexico at the Indigenous Peoples Burning Network. Do you remember they were talking about the importance of fir and how they don't have hardly any? And I remember you, Margo, were like, we'll ship you a truck. And they were like, what?
Remember that.
I often thought of ways to ship them fir trees. Another thing that happens with these large logging industries is they go out and they spray all the hardwoods, which is destroying a lot of our tan oak trees, a lot of the black oaks. And that really honestly is just for them to make more money. But what it does is it affects our ecosystem because those chemicals get into the groundwater and into the creeks and streams and into the rivers, which affect the people. So, one of the things that I kind of like talk to organizations about when we're discussing logging companies and such is, how to work with them to teach them to realize that they're not just poisoning trees, they're poisoning the environment and the people too. And to see if there's another way that they can possibly maintain their business without destroying the people in that environment.
Yeah, they do that up here too, is they spray like our deciduous or hardwood trees as well. And it's become a bit of like a powder keg issue because, now those were almost too like slightly more, more natural fuel breaks, although we are seeing in early spring that those can burn too, just like a conifer stand would. But I think that that's one thing that there's movement against, but I think that most people don't even know that they do that, like most of the general public.
Yeah, I think because we're in such a rural area, we tend to notice things a lot more than you would in, I would say, civilization. Because, living in civilization for me, people ask me, what do you think we should do, just being in the city? And I'm like, well, number one, get to know your neighbors. I mean, I've lived in neighborhoods where I didn't even know who my neighbors were because they didn't want to know who anybody was in their neighborhood. They just wanted to be left alone in their own little environment. Well, out here, we're actually alone in our own little environment, but we tend to see everything that goes on around us. And we have, I would like to say, a very healthy group of activists in our territory for our trees and our water and our fish. And, we're always trying to make sure that we're taking care of our environment. And part of that is, fighting these organizations that come in and destroy what we need to survive as Indigenous people.
Simpson Timber used to aerial spray, and lots of people were getting cancer, or the babies were being born with extra fingers or toes because the chemical they was using, the plants would literally grow themselves to death. Mm-hmm. And so we fought hard, and between having medical records of the effects, and the Californians for Alternatives to Toxics, who were experts in all those chemical effects and stuff, we were successful in stopping that. I only had to go to jail once. Hey. Cut that piece from the interview.
That's funny though, because I do remember Bill Tripp, because when I went to Karuk, I said to Bill Tripp, like, it just seems like there were so many women involved there. And he was saying that what he thinks lots of it is because there's always been that activism community of always having to like fight. And he was talking a lot about like undamming the Klamath River and others where, people were just kind of raised in having that activism and standing up for their territory. And so, yeah, I see that as well. And I know that it's been, you have been successful now in undamming the Klamath. So that's great. So one question I had too was, I know, Margo, you've talked a lot about how cultural burns should be exempt from air quality regulations. And so I'm just wondering if you can just chat a bit about that, and how, I know for you guys in California, the air quality regulations are much more strictly enforced and stuff than I would say that we have in Canada. So I'm quite interested in how you work with that, and how you're trying to pursue an exemption.
So the permitting process requires us to get air quality permits. We used to have to get one from both the North Coast Air Quality and the tribe, but now we just notify the North Coast Air Quality and we get the permit from the tribe. There was just a new policy in place to reduce the amount of smoke allowable down to the 2.5, which is troublesome on many fronts. And so we have been looking at avenues to accommodate continued and expanded burning. Right now, the accommodation is to file as I can't remember the exact term, but it's like a rare and unplanned thing.
Oh, okay.
Which is totally crazy, because that's what they use for like wildfire. So wildfire smoke is exempt from them meeting their air quality goals. And so we are trying to get it to where cultural burns are considered as part of the baseline of what the amount of smoke in the air is. And so basically it would be exempted. Mm-hmm. We are not there yet. I think that we are going to need a bigger push from more tribes stepping up and moving that forward. But everybody, maybe not everybody, but most people at this point recognize the need to increase the pace and scale of prescribed and cultural burns to combat the destruction of the wildfires. Mm-hmm. But it's really kind of putting a kink into that, which is still kind of being ironed out. So that's kind of where we are. It's not ideal. We're lucky that that Elizabeth has built a really strong relationship with the North Coast Air Quality, and also that the tribe has their own policies in place.
Yeah. Recently, we were just discussing at the Wildfire Resilience meeting how that came into place. And it turns out that it was a government agency that was burning and had lost control of their prescribed fire and created more smoke than they were comfortable with. But the other piece to that was apparently they hadn't notified the air quality district that they were planning to be burning. And so when community members started calling in and saying, we have all this smoke, we have all this happening, why didn't you notify us? And the air quality person had to say that they hadn't been notified and they didn't know what was happening. And so that was really interesting for me because building the relationship I have with the Humboldt County Air Quality really opened my eyes to what's necessary to make this happen for all of us. And so part of our calls in the morning, we don't just call dispatch, we call air quality. And if someone's there, we speak to them. If not, we leave them a voicemail letting them know we're going to burn, approximately how many acres we're going to burn and when we anticipate we'll be done. And that goes a long ways to building that relationship and that comfort zone. And also with the Yurok Tribe being as large as it is and having our own air quality department, that's really helpful also because the county was willing to say, you're a tribal entity, you have your own sovereign rights, and you don't really actually have to, comply with our district. But having that relationship with them and them knowing what we're doing and knowing that we're comfortable with what we're doing, they become comfortable also. And so that was a huge piece for me is always, building those bridges, making those networks work together. And we do, like I said, notify the dispatch. We tell them, this is where we're going to be burning. This is when we anticipate starting. This is when we anticipate stopping. And then calling them at the end and telling them, okay, we're done. Our smoke's out. We just wanted to inform you. That actually has given us the grace or the leeway that we have to do what we do, was just being able to build those relationships and make people comfortable.
Okay. Yeah, really great. I think I just had read that study that was just released this week that said that 50,000 Californians had died in the last decade from wildfire smoke prematurely. And so my concern with that is that it's like they kind of lump everything together, right? So, they're acting like for me, like sometimes when we're burning or doing cultural fire, like our neighbors can't even notice. Like it depends what we're burning or how much. But, so I'm worried in that now that there's all this interest in smoke is that we're going to start having pushback on prescribed fire and cultural fire smoke too. So I'm really happy to hear that, you're pursuing that. And hopefully, if we can offer any assistance, I think it's really important because I see a movement from like now that the health community and others are getting more involved, that maybe they're not understanding like where, most of the smoke is coming from.
Yeah. This something that's really interesting here on this extension of the reservation was the tribe put air purifiers in elders' homes, in family homes, and they actually make sure that every season someone has new filters for these air purifiers. And part of what we do is, not just our tribal air quality department notifying the community with a 10-day comment period ahead of time, but, we notify the local schools, the clinics, the local community members when we're going to be burning and, let those people know that if we're going to be putting up smoke, make sure your elders are indoors and their air purifiers are on, make sure that you're taking all of the precautions you need. And that's been really helpful here.
So I just remembered the name of the accommodation for cultural fire smoke is called exceptional events, which is defined as natural or unusual event. And so that's what they're wanting us to utilize now to exempt our cultural fire smoke. But it's a pretty in-depth process to apply for it. And so we are still pushing for our smoke to be considered baseline by the California Air Resources Board. And I also would just like to add that one of the beneficial fire policy groups that I participate in they're a really diverse group. And the American Lung Association is part of that group. And so they are supporting prescribed burns. because of the limited smoke that they put out compared to wildfires. So the Lung Association is on board with it.
Yeah, that's good. But I mean, it's reality too, right? There's no place in the world where we don't have a smoke option. Like there's always going to be smoke. We live in vegetation and vegetation will burn. So I just think that there needs to be like care with language that some people are using around it, because it can be harmful to like our cultural practice that we're trying to do. And I just find, now people in Canada are starting to support and get more interested in Indigenous cultural fire. But I could see a movement where it's like, now we need to, stop because we're putting up smoke into the air. So I hope not.
Right. Well, there are also there's some really good information comparing prescribed fire smoke to wildfire smoke. And I have those graphs if you want me to send it to you.
Yeah, sure. That would be great. I know too, we've got a study up here that they're trying to get where, everyone's into drones now. So it's flying drones into, cultural smoke columns, prescribed fire columns, and then wildfire smoke columns to see like what the chemistry is of the smoke. So I'm hoping things like that will kind of help to, prove. But also for me, it's also the quantity of smoke, and then, that you're burning at times where you can notify people, right? So your smoke is much more under control than a wildfire event too. So I just wanted to chat too about, so I also read you're reintroducing elk herds in your territory. So I wanted to know a little bit more. Up here, the reintroduction of bison is a big thing, or buffalo, to like areas, and using fire for that. So I'd like to hear more about the elk.
For me, a big piece to that was our one of our previous board members, Tom Wilson, had a dream of reintroducing elk to a prairie or meadow in his land for his grandchildren. Well, I have actually seen an elk on that property. And it was really nice because with all of the fuel loading that we have, the coastal elk were not able to travel through the high country into the Karuk territory for those elk to meet anymore. And so with all of the burns we've been doing and being able to open up those historic pathways for them, they're now able to travel from the coast into our territory. And it's really nice to have the elders, so excited about that happening, because some of them said they haven't seen elk here since they were children. We're talking 70, 80, and 90-year-old people who now don't have to drive to the coast to see the elk anymore. They're actually in their territory. And so the biggest thing for me now is not telling the young men where we see these elk, because we want them to repopulate. And the young men get so excited because they're like, oh, there's an elk, let's go hunting. But, it's growing and it's happening, and it's all because of the work we're doing. And like Margo said, we started out, as such a small group burning for basket materials. But now, we're doing restoration of our environment. We're restoring foods, medicines, basket materials, gathering sites for families that haven't been able to gather on their own sites for a long time. But being able to reintroduce such an amazing species into our territory is just, it's overwhelming when you see it. I mean, I literally cried when I saw the elk in that territory, because I know how much it meant to him to have that there. Mm-hmm. And I know how much it means to some of the elder men. I've had an elder man tell me that they went hunting and they were able to get a deer that didn't have any tumors or any sickness in it. And he said he actually felt healthier after having that particular deer, because he knew that it was the fire that we were putting on the ground that was creating the healthy food for these ruminants to go in and to forage and to have food for them. So it's exciting. I hope it continues to grow. And I really honestly hope that we get to a point in my lifetime where our young people can go out and hunt elk again in our own territory.
It is exciting. Yeah. One of our priority areas for restoration is the prairies. And so that our elk will come back home because they need to have a place, that's hospitable to them, and that's prairies. And so we're trying to enlarge our prairies. I'd like to add to that we're also have plans in the making to reintroduce porcupines. Porcupines, there used to be a lot here. We use their quills as the yellow color in our baskets, and then we also use the quills as a regalia item. But I haven't seen a single porcupine in my whole life, except one I saw in a zoo up Oregon. Yeah. And apparently the Forest Service killed them because they were killing the fir trees, eating their bark. And so we're thinking, well, that would be the perfect animal to introduce back onto those prairies.
Tree clearing.
Right?
I actually have seen porcupine in the upper extension of the Yurok Reservation when I was young. We used to see them on the road all the time. And I remember a couple of times my dad had seen some that had been hit by cars, and he made us get out and grab them and put them in a burlap sack. And I was always so scared I was going to get poked because I remember what the dogs looked like with those quills coming out of their face after chasing porcupines. But, we'd hang him in a tree, and then my dad would send us out there with a pillow to beat on this poor porcupine to get his quills, so my mom and aunts could use them. But like Margo said, we don't see them here anymore. And it's really kind of like we can actually see species disappearing from our territory. And that's kind of frightening for me, but now that we're doing all this burning and we have cameras out in these units, we're able to see the mountain lions and the bears and the bobcats and the various birds and species that come back into this territory. And we're able to see what they're eating, what they're consuming, what they want. And that kind of helps us direct, the fire that we're putting in certain areas and how we're working with it, is to be able to see what those species need.
Yeah, it really makes me think of the beaver, because up here, we killed a lot of beaver, like in the fur trade and other things. And now we have such a fire problem of these extensive fires in the boreal forest. And I just think if we had, even half the beavers back that used to be up there that create wetlands, that's very natural fire breaks on the landscape. And what would it look like? But, now nobody wants a beaver plugging up their culvert or anything. So yeah, they're not very welcome still in a lot of places here.
That's kind of sad. I want to see one.
Yeah. They're pretty critical to diversity and in the ecosystems.
Yeah. I personally love them. We've got one that's always battling with one of our neighbors and plugging the culverts and building their dam. And finally, they've just given up and they're in a happy relationship with the beaver, because it was just, another beaver would just show up. So I think they finally gave up on trying to get him out.
That's awesome. Yeah. I hear that we have beaver in this territory, and I've never seen one. And every time a elder man tells another person that they've seen one, I'm like, I go sit by that part of the river for I don't know how long, hoping I get to see it, but I never have yet.
Yeah. So I just wanted to chat with you too about, where we met in person finally was in Santa Fe, New Mexico at the Indigenous Peoples Burning Network meeting. And for me, that was just such a fantastic experience. I often talk about in Canada, how it's a much smaller community of Indigenous people in fire. So to go down there and be surrounded by 50, 60 people who, some are learning fire, some have had their careers in cultural fire. I'm just wondering what it's like for you. I know, Margo, you've been around that group since the beginning. I'm wondering what kind of led you to forming that network.
It was actually initiated, the Indigenous Peoples Burn Network, by the Nature Conservancy. And about 6 years ago, Mary Huffman came with Jeremy Bailey. We had been working with Jeremy Bailey for several years at that point, doing the TREX model of fire implementation. And so that was Mary's in, because we have a high opinion of Jeremy. And so she came and she met with some cultural practitioners from the Yurok, Karuk, and Hupa tribe. and we met out in a small cabin up on the Forest Service property. And they, asked if we was interested in like reclaiming our traditional burn practices. And of course we said yes, because we had been burning successfully, but it was certainly not what you would call in a traditional way. We have our yellow shirts and green pants and hard hats and fire engines and hose lays. And so as a group, we set out to create a plan to get back to true traditional burning, burning at the right place at the right time without all these other entrapments. And so we was their pilot project, and we created a plan. It's called the Yurok Healthy Country Plan. And it's all about fire and restoring the land with fire and getting from where we're at today back to true traditional burning, which the family burn program is part of that, because that's how we used to burn. Families would burn their own hunting and gathering areas and around their villages. And so that's where that family burn program arose out of as a strategy from that. And so as the pilot project, we pretty much the guys decided that it should be the women basket weavers that lead it. I think part of it was they was just too busy. And part of it just sat right, And so we had a basket weaver from each of the tribes as one, Debbie McConnell from Hoopa, and
Renee
Stoffer, thank you, from Karuk. And then there were advisors from the tribe too. And it was not approached as like a tribe thing, like, they didn't go to the tribal council and say, this is what we want to do. It was approached from a cultural practitioner way of doing things. And for our plan, it was the success of the plan is not really based on like scientific methods of measuring things. So for example, like one of our measures of success is, do basket weavers have enough hazel to gather with? And at this point, we have so much hazel, we can invite our neighboring tribes to come pick with us. And so, yes, we met that measure of success, and like how many families are doing family burns. And so it's along those lines. And now, for a few years now, we have been supporting other tribes to also reclaim their traditional fire practices. And that's exciting stuff, because I think pretty much all the tribes across the U.S., if not all, almost all, used fire, on the land. And so it's really exciting to help them start their fire programs or build their fire programs to encompass cultural burning.
Yeah, it's funny. Even when I talked in nations from out east, and they talk a lot about, that they don't have a cultural fire history, other things. But then when you start actually talking about fire and other things, I think because the history of colonization there has been longer, that they don't maybe have but they all start talking about it. And I'm like, that's a fire culture that you have there,
right.
And just and so for me, that's been exciting about chatting to people. And that's what I love about the Indigenous Peoples Burning Network, because like in Canada, a lot of our fire knowledge from communities like that has been, they say lost, but basically like ripped from us. And, people haven't been able to put that into practice on the land. So I feel like what we have to do now in Canada is to really catalyze Indigenous burners and like really accelerate the number and the learning that people can do from one another. So that's what I love about the Indigenous Peoples Burning Network, is because, it brings together people to learn best practice, to get out on the land and use fire.
Right. And it's a place-based thing, like we know a lot about burning here in our territory. We don't really know much about burning on flat grassland because we don't really have any flat grassland. And so, we can share with other people how we put our fire program together and how it works for us. And then they can adapt that to fit, their home place and their needs.
Yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, just before we wrap up, I just wanted to thank you both so much for coming on and sharing today about the great work you're doing. But I had to bug Margo about being like, I would say almost like our Julia Roberts for like the fire movie world. So when I was Googling you, Margo, to prep for this, and oh my goodness, it shows up like, the Fire Tender Show, the Elemental movie, the red carpet here. I was like, dang, Margo, go get it. But yeah, I was just wondering, with all that stuff, like you've really made, I think, a point in your career to like put the message out there of cultural fire. And so I'm just wondering how that experience has been for you of like participating in these movies and, these docuseries and stuff where people come and learn about cultural fire.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting how that all came about because Elizabeth and I started doing online presentations about the benefits of fire, and the necessity of reclaiming fire. And so it got online. And then so when people looked up cultural burning, we would show up. And then so they'd get a hold of us, and it just kind of built from there. And so we didn't really, realize the effect that was going to have in terms of people wanting to come show up every time we're doing tricks. And oh my gosh, for a little bit there, it was getting overwhelming. We had like 5 cameras in our face, and and we're like, we need to get a handle on this. They seem to think that we're here to do a movie, and we're not. We're here to burn, and they need to not be in our way.
Yes. Yep.
But it has really garnered some benefit in that it really has gotten the word out there, about cultural burning and the benefits of fire. And as part of that, different philanthropic groups, foundations have heard about us and gotten a hold of us to support what we're doing. And that has been huge because, the government grants, you have to be really specific about what you're going to do and exactly where, and then you have some elder coming up and saying, oh my gosh, I'm so afraid, summer's going to be here, then, the wildfire season. And we're like, yeah, we can come clean around your place because, we have this money that they give us as just general operating expense, so we can use it however we want. In fact, our ability to purchase that property and those big buildings for our cultural fire training center was one foundation gave us $1 million. I mean, how sweet is that?
And then, that's a lot of grants to write if you had to do it individually.
And it's really hard to find grants that will give you money for construction.
Yes.
So yeah, it has really helped out our organization. We have like about maybe 6 different foundations supporting our work. And so we're really thankful for that. And it's a little funny to think about people thinking I'm some celebrity or something, because I'm still driving around in my dusty old car that, I got to throw things off the seat if someone's going to ride with me. And
you don't have a chauffeur, really? No, just kidding.
Well,
I am her chauffeur.
Once I got Claire into going with me because I thought we was going to do stuff about prairie grasses, and that's her specialty. And we drove down to San Francisco, and it wasn't about prairie grasses at all.
Yeah. It's funny with the media crews. Like I know here, there's a lot more now that want to, come and film cultural fire. And because in Canada, especially, there's such a short window. And I had one crew come, and it was like literally came in the fall, and we thought it would work, but it was still green grass. Like we had a really green fall late, but they just wanted fire on the ground. Like they just kept begging me, like, please, like, just we need fire on camera, put a line down. And so finally, like I was younger and I relented, but then I have regretted it ever since. Cause I'm just like, there's going to be some elder that's like, why the hell is that girl burning green grass? Like, so yeah, I can see with the media that, it's hard sometimes and takes away a little bit from the event, but I'm honestly glad that you guys have done a lot of it, because it has brought a lot of attention and public awareness.
Yeah. I did a podcast for Dr. Mary Nancy Boy, and didn't think anything of it. And then I received an email from the State Department saying they wanted to send me to Greece to talk about cultural fire. And I thought to myself, oh, this is ridiculous. Nobody sends anybody across the world, all expenses paid, to do this. And so I ignored it. And about 2 weeks later, I get another message going, this is really time sensitive. We heard you on this podcast. We need to book your flights and all this stuff. And I was just like, oh my God. So I replied. I did go to Greece, and I was telling Margo, flying in, I was so excited because I saw all these little smokes coming up, and I'm like, oh my God, they're burning. This is awesome. And I get there and I talked to the professor who puts this on, and he said, oh no, it's illegal to burn in Greece. And I was like, what? And he said, the government literally turns a blind eye to the farmers because the farmers refuse to not burn the cuttings from their trees and everything else in order to protect their farms. And so they just do it, and they just take the chance that the government isn't going to do anything to them. And I was like, oh my God. So here I was all excited thinking, yes, they're burning there. And here it's illegal for them to do that. But, they said the greatest thing that they heard in the entire presentation was that we travel with the Indigenous Peoples Burning Network and teach people how to resume or regain their burning rights or their knowledge. And they said, everybody here is so scared to death of fire, and you're standing on the stage talking about how amazing fire is and what a great job it does and how much you love fire. He goes, and we're all looking at you like you're a crazy person.
Oh my God.
And I said, there are some points in my life where I do feel like I am a crazy person. But, this is something that it really honestly is going to take the entire population of the world to make this happen. And for us to be able to restore our environment if we intend to be here for any amount of time. And so it was just really kind of shocking for me. And then, of course, someone who's filming us sent their photographer with me. So I literally, everywhere I went, I had people saying, where's your camera person? They want to put a mic on us. And I was like, oh my God, it was just awful. And at breakfast the first morning, I have all these people swarm me, and I'm like, good morning. And they're like, oh my God, we've seen you in so many movies. And I was like, I'm just me. I'm just a normal person. I'm not this big movie star. But they were like, oh my God, you guys are all over the internet. You're all over the movies. You're everywhere. And then, of course, tomorrow there's a documentary coming out on us that we did probably 2 years ago with a group from Australia. So we'll get to see that tomorrow night and see what that looks like, because I haven't even seen any of it to know, oh my God, I hope it's not going to be horrible.
What's it called? What's the title of it?
I can't even remember the name, to be honest.
Okay.
It's on PBS, right?
Yeah, it's on PBS tomorrow night.
Okay. Yeah, there was one called Fire Tender that was a PBS one, but we can, anyways, I'll look it up and we'll put it in the show notes.
That's a different one, actually. That's a different. The photographer that went with me to Greece was actually, they filmed that one, and then they're filming a feature length on us also for PBS.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting, that thing you said about being made to feel crazy. Like, I think what's crazy right now is like this status quo we're trying to live in, and especially in Canada, where our forests are just burning up and everything's so unhealthy and we're losing biodiversity. Like, that to me is the crazy thing, is trying to keep that. Yeah, trying to keep pushing that system.
Yeah. Well, and that's the great thing too about media, is that, it can get that message out to a lot of people, in a big way, especially if it comes out on PBS, that those points that you just brought up can be shared to a much broader audience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The one we did with, I believe it's called The Changing Planet, is also on PBS, and every 7 years they will come back apparently and interview again and see what our progress was and how things have changed or evolved. And that's really interesting too. But I barely even remembered the filming we did with the Australian group until I got this email going, it's coming out on PBS. And I was like, oh yeah, I forgot all about that.
I did too.
Wow, that's quite a while.
It takes them a long time to finish their projects, a few years. How about that lady from France? It was so funny. I got this email from the French press. I thought it was spam. I thought it was like somebody selling coffee makers or something. French press.
I remember when you said that, I was like, who's selling coffee pots? What does it have to do with us?
That's
oh my God.
Buddy.
Yeah, well, there is a lot. It's hard to sort out sometimes the good, from the bad, especially in terms of that type of request.
She came and she drove us crazy. We just wanted to run and hide from her, but she actually came out with a really good product.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I started to feel almost like intimidated by her messages and her phone calls and things, because it's like, oh my God, what does she want now?
Yeah.
Right?
I had a global I had a global news reporter, so that's one of our nations stations in Canada. And they were like that. It was basically like, when are we coming to your house? And I'm like, hey, I haven't invited you. And then she kept contacting me. And then she's like, we looked up your address. Here's what your address is. We can be there this day. I was like, what the heck?
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was just so rude. But anyways, they did end up, I could have put my foot down, but it was actually for a bigger show. So I did end up doing it, and it was good in the end. But yeah, it was so forceful. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah. Wow. It was really interesting because she kept saying to me, I want to come to your house. And I'm like, I am living in my house that is not finished yet. And I don't actually want a film crew in my house. I'll meet you somewhere in the forest. I'll meet you outside by a river or whatever, but I'm not bringing anyone into my home. And now at this point, we're so busy that I still haven't finished my house. And I keep thinking this is going to be my out every time someone wants to come to my house. No, sorry, my house isn't finished. I can't help you.
Well, pretty soon you're going to have the beautiful Cultural Fire Center, and they'll just have to go there. You can just say that's your house.
Right.
Yep. It'll pretty much be where most of us live most of the time anyway, planning to burn or burning or thinking about burning.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, yeah, thank you so much for being on the podcast, and looking forward to continuing to chat with you both. You always bring such a fun energy. I love it.
People always panic in the woods when they can't find Margo. And I'm like, you have to stop and listen. And they're like, what am I listening for? And then she'll laugh. And I'll be, that's what you're listening for.
Or look for the big flames. That's where I'll be.
I always tell them if there's a tree torching, she'll be right there.
Thanks, everyone. That was the last episode. Thanks so much to Margo and Elizabeth for their time and just sharing with us all the great work that they're doing. I can't wait to catch up with them again at the next event. And yeah, what did you think, Matt?
Yeah. I mean, this conversation wraps it up perfectly. Like I said at the beginning, right? They're such powerhouses, and they know their craft so well, and they bring so much optimism and so much excitement, and just like it makes you want to be a part of it, right? So it's such a fantastic way to wrap it all up, and like this whole season covers so much ground, right? From community equity conversations, there's conversations about misunderstanding fire and developing healthy relationship to fire and land and all kinds. There's so much ground covered, and it was all so powerful. And the idea of allies versus accomplices was like a really, really strong conversation to me with Alex Sahara. Like that one it hit home in ways that I didn't expect, knowing that like, oh yeah, there's places to grow here, right? As a non-Indigenous person that is in that community. So the whole season was just there's so much there. It was really just a pleasure to be able to produce it and help out and to be a part of those conversations. It was cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. I'm kind of sad the matriarch season's over, but I mean, I wanted to just again point everyone to the show notes that we have for every single episode that we have of Good Fire. So even like season 1 and season 2 now have show notes, and in those show notes, there's resources. So like with Margo and Elizabeth, this episode, lots of the things that we talked about, you can go into those show notes and they'll all be linked, like the different movies that they've done, different articles about them, their bio, the Cultural Fire Management Council. Everything should be there for you in the show notes to kind of follow and see how you can individually support them. I know the Cultural Fire Management Council has a donate page. And so if you are inspired by the work that they're doing and the cultural fire center that they're building, like drop them a few bucks there to support the work. As most Indigenous movements, we're scraping together, money to make these things happen. So it'd be great to have support for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so much there, right? And I'm excited for a tentative season 4.
Yeah, season 4. So, I mean, I was saying to Matt, now that I'm with ILI, we have, Indigenous Leadership Initiative, we have such an amazing comms team, and they love podcasts and supporting podcasts. So yeah, we're already kind of starting to think about season 4 and what we're going to do. As you all know, who are our loyal listeners, we are slow. So apologies, but one day we will release season 4, and we have some really exciting, cool ideas for season 4 and just making it totally different than past seasons. So yeah, I hope that you'll all tune in for that whenever it's released, or feel free, to go back and listen to other episodes. And we thank everybody who shared our podcast. Like Matt was saying, this is the podcast that like never seems to die. Like it just, you were saying most of the podcast things that you do, like people listen and then there's a drop off. But with Good Fire, we're just getting increasing people listening. So it's been wonderful.
It's consistent. And the teaser has the most listens out of anything I've ever produced. It's got like 20,000 downloads or something like that.
Oh, geez, intimidating.
So I don't know how many times that's people listening to it twice or 3 or 4 times, but
well, yeah, hopefully not too many times, because then that gets creepy.
They're just excited. They just want to know what's going on. When's it coming out?
So many people that'll say, like, I'll be at a conference and just talking, and someone will come over and be like, "You're the voice of the Good Fire," and I'm like, "Oh my goodness!"
Yeah, you are in that world. You will run into those people. You're famous. Yeah.
Well, it's famous in a very small world of Indigenous fire, but yeah, it's been great too to feature just so many people on here who are also doing incredible work. And so, yeah, I feel like support them, follow them on their social media, other things, even that, like just getting followers that you can share things with is really helpful for folks that are doing work in our area. So yeah, we'll see you. So that wraps season 3. And yeah, we'll maybe drop some little teaser or special episodes before season 4 comes out. But yeah, hope you're all doing well. Take care, look after yourself in this era of climate change. And yeah, commit to stop burning fossil fuels. That's like, we talk about these things in Good Fire, but if we keep our carbon emissions at the rate that we're going, there's no amount of Good Fire that can offset what we're seeing and the impacts to people across the planet. So yeah, anyways, that's where I'll end. And I will say EVs are becoming affordable. I just bought one. I never thought I'd be able to afford an EV. We got a solar system. So, there is different ways and different grant programs. So look into it.
Thanks, Amy. That was great.
Thank you. See you later.
A huge thank you to Canada Wildfire for their support of this podcast. As well, we would like to thank the Fighting Gunditjmara for allowing us to share their fire song Ween as the official song of Good Fire Podcast.